And
I
now
should
we are. Now
not
here we
have been
go.
I should not have been arrested. Was
Um,
not, oh, we're on.
now, again, David, we do not answer anything. You just tell them you're waiting for you want to speak to your attorney. Do you understand that?
Yeah, well, I shouldn't have been arrested in the first place.
Well, I
I,
mean,
I
what
I
you
mean,
said to the cops afterwards is not good.
well, I wouldn't have been publicly drunk had they not asked me to get out of the car. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, no, we're on.
Okay.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to. This is not Under the Radar, although it is our Under the Radar crew. This is our delayed Sunday bracket racket here on Monday, December 8th. Uh, I'm Chad Sherwood, filling in for Galen tonight because he's not available.
Yeah.
But present with us is David Griggs. David, how we doing?
Well, I've had better weekends, as you know.
Well, um, yeah. We really need to start it. Maybe we need to start one of those websites with the collections for your bail funds. Maybe
Oh,
that
Hoops
would.
HD covers that.
Oh. Well, we're kind of running out of this expense account here, especially after a trip to Alaska, a trip to New Orleans. I think we're sending it to Utah later this week.
Yeah.
But we did want to get right into some of the news and some of the great games that have been going on the past week, and kind of a preview of what's a lighter week this week, as most of the schools are into their finals. But the very first thing I wanted to hit on, David, was news out of the Big Ten that they have booked Madison Square Garden for their tournament in 2018. As we know, the Big East tournament is in Madison Square Garden and is not leaving, so instead the Big Ten will actually do their conference tournament 2018 a week earlier, during the same week that we're seeing some of the smaller conferences like the Big South and maybe the Missouri Valley West Coast
Yeah.
Conference start out then. But it'll be a week earlier. Conference season will start the last week of December in order to make up for that. Your thoughts about this?
I think it's a little outrageous that the Big Ten thinks New York City is in its footprint. It's not. I like Chicago and Indianapolis as a location for it, just out of tradition and proximity and rivalries. But since we have bloated super conferences now, why not New York? As far as playing a week early, I think it's great. I'm surprised no other conference has thought of it before. They're not in these ratings wars like some of them are. Instead of a situation where if you win the conference tournament, you win it on Sunday night, and then literally in less than 48 hours you're traveling to your new site. I think you get some time to enjoy it. I mean, one of the things that's kind of lost is that these are conference championships. I've been around schools that were smaller, and we did play earlier in the week, and we won some conference championships, and it was fun to have a week to enjoy your conference championship experience before you started worrying about the NCAA tournament. So in that aspect, I think it's good. Not that the Big Ten regular season champion or even tournament winner often needs to win the tournament to get there. But, you get it over a week before, and you can go home and relax and enjoy it and scout everybody. I think it actually gives them an advantage.
Well, I think the question here is, though, with a full week, really a week and a half layoff from, if you look at a Sunday championship, to a week and a half to the Thursday Thursday or Friday NCAA first round or round of 64 games, that's a huge layoff for a team. That being said, I would not be surprised to see some of these Big Ten teams schedule a non-conference game during the week after their conference tournament, during what is normally championship week. You can go out and schedule. Not only you don't have to just go for like somebody from the Atlantic Sun or the Big South, a tiny school. You could go out, schedule Gonzaga, schedule Wichita State, schedule Northern Iowa. I mean, these are other conferences that are finishing up that first week. Why not take it, not game you would have in December, throw it to that second week in March, and give yourself a chance to have one more game. And especially if you are the conference tournament champions, here's a chance to celebrate in front of your home crowd your championship by playing a game.
Yes.
It's just something else to think about.
That is something that is rarely done, but is within the rules. Oftentimes, when you see it, it is St. Mary's did it a couple times.
It's always St. Mary's.
Yeah, and I don't know if they just couldn't find a game or what, but they would schedule a home game against a team that missed its conference tournament. So you're talking about a really weak opponent. I believe there were a couple years where this is also within the rules, but very rarely done. In fact, when I saw this was done, I was like, well, that's actually really smart. Where Gonzaga scheduled their exhibition game, what you normally see at the beginning of the year, after the conference tournament, which I thought was pretty ingenious, because they sell it out. There's a lot of fervor. Not that Gonzaga has trouble selling out anyway, but it kind of keeps the rust from building up, so to speak, to get one game in there, even if it is a lower division team or a team of lower caliber. Um, that being said, that is a concern. Finishing that early, I don't think it's. There haven't been many cases where I felt that affected teams in a negative way. It didn't seem to affect Wichita State the year they went to the Final Four, or last year for that matter. I know Wichita went out early, but they still played very well. I don't think it was a symptom of having a long layoff.
Well, we'll see what happens. Apparently, the word for the Big Ten is that this is not going to be a one-time thing. They want Madison Square Garden to be in the regular rotation. They've already added, I believe, 2017. They're going to be in the Verizon Center in D.C. also. So they are.
Yeah.
That's going to be 2 years in a row that they're completely out of the Midwest.
Yeah.
But of course, living in New Jersey, I'm in Big Ten country here, so they should have it in locally. Maybe we get a Philly tournament or Atlantic City. We'll try to work on that.
Why not?
David, something else for those that are following on the website, we should by Tuesday morning have the new bracket up. And I know you've been working hard with getting the S curve ready for that.
Yeah.
So let's start right there. Who did we come up with for the top of the S curve? I know we're not going to show the whole bracket tonight. You can look at that in the morning. But who are the top few teams here right now?
Well, again, and it's pretty much chalk. We have Kentucky, Duke, Arizona, and Whiskey. This is a team. I really hate to say this because I don't like admitting that I'm wrong. This is a Duke team that can, in fact, win on the road. That's always been one of my biggest hang-ups with Duke. I'm always quick to point out that they've only been past the Sweet 16 twice in the last 10 years, albeit one of those was a national championship. But it's a team that typically is only decent away from home, certainly not top 5 or top 10. And I think they've in the past struggled to beat non-tournament teams, or for that matter, non-NIT teams. This year, to go into Wisconsin and beat them on their floor, it was probably the most impressive single win that any team will manage this year, unless somebody wins at Kentucky or something like that. Very deserving of the number 2 spot on the S curve. Hands down, just a fantastic win for Duke.
I agree with you, David. It was absolutely fantastic. Honestly, I think Duke should probably be number 3 on the S curve, just because I think Kentucky's white team and Kentucky's blue team should be the 1 and 2. But aside from that, I agree with you. That was an extremely impressive win. I mean, it shows just that Wisconsin's still in the top 4 despite losing a home game, and to be in the top 4 with a home loss this early in the season means that you lost to a really good team at home.
Right, I think so too. That's at the top. The 2 line, Gonzaga falls off the 1 after losing at Arizona. No shame in losing on the road to a top seeded team. But I don't know. I just can't see them being up there with Wisconsin, Duke, and Kentucky. Nothing else too crazy. We dropped Wichita down to the 3. We have Iowa all the way up on the 4 line, along with West Virginia, Utah, and a Baylor team who I know the rankings came out today. I can't remember exactly where they are or if they're even in it, but only 1 loss, and they've looked really good this year. Certainly they haven't exactly just loaded up on cupcakes like a lot of other teams have done. They have some decent wins.
You mentioned the rankings, David. In fact, there are 3 new teams that showed up in one or both of the rankings this week. St. John's, amazingly, is ranked. I did not believe in the St. John's team, but right now they have not lost to anybody outside of the Ken Pom top 10, and they have 2 wins against the top 30. I don't know that there's anybody else. There's very few other teams out there with that type of number, and I think that makes you deserving of a top 25 ranking at this point.
Right.
Also, cracking the top 25, Northern Iowa, a team that you and I have been very high on during the Under the Radar podcast. We're not going to be able to talk about them in that podcast later this week because
Right.
they are now a top 25 team.
And
And
deservedly so. I mean, I think that they are really good. Uh, I don't know if they're legitimately one of the 25 best teams, but they're certainly very, very safely inside the bubble. And again, and you look at other teams in that league, like a team you like Evansville, they get 4 shots at really high marquee quality wins, so it's good for the rest of that conference too.
yeah, it is. I think we're going to see, it's not just going to be Wichita State and nobody in the
Yeah,
MVC this year. Do still like this Evansville team. The other team that cracked the top 25, maybe this can segue right into the next portion where we're going to go through a review of recent games. The very last game last night, for those that stayed up to watch it, the Washington Huskies at home, Lorenzo Romar's team completely pounded San Diego State. It was a 49-36 victory, but it was twice as bad as that.
yeah,
They're now 7-0, and they not only cracked the top 25, but I believe they came in at number 17, at least in the AP poll.
yeah.
Huge jump for the Huskies.
Right, and they're unbeaten. They had another. There were other ones on their profile, that looked to be decent but not great. But they handled what we still believe to be a good San Diego State team, although perhaps not as good as we thought. I don't think Washington is legitimately 17th. By that I mean I think that by the end of the year they're not going to be up there that high. But for now, how do you argue against it? Who else has done more than they have? They're undefeated,
They're
and they
undefeated.
beat.
They won the tournament out there, the Wooden Legacy, I believe it was called.
Yeah,
They beat UTEP in the championship there. They beat a Long Beach State team that has played a lot of tough competition. That's really it in terms of wins. So it's really the San Diego State win and not much more at the moment.
right.
But I mean, that was such an impressive win. Maybe voters kind of overreacted to it when casting their ballots early this morning. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think you can't argue with undefeated at this point.
Right.
Um, let's kind of turn back. We want to run through some of the games that took place over the past week. Uh, we had the 2 big challenge series this past week: the Big Ten ACC Challenge and the Big 12 SEC Challenge. The Big Ten and the Big 12, probably as expected, won both series.
Yeah.
Some of the more notable wins. Louisville against over Ohio State on Tuesday night. First of all, that
Yeah.
game shocked me. Really shocked me how dominant Louisville looked.
Yeah, especially early on. Now, U.S. or Ohio State did kind of nip and tuck and crawl their way back into it as the game went on, but Louisville sprinted ahead of what is, by all accounts, a very good Ohio State team. Really like this Louisville team. I think they're ranked 6th or 5th or in that neighborhood. I think that's about where they are. Um, they go they go to Kentucky this year, or is Kentucky? I forget. No, Kentucky comes to them.
Kentucky comes to them this year, yes.
Yeah, I don't think they're good enough to really step up on Kentucky. But I mean, again, that game, it's typically really emotional and sometimes very sloppily played, and that might be somewhat of an equalizer. But outside of that, yeah, Louisville in that game looked really good. Now they need to leave home occasionally, but because I think other than Minnie in the first game, have they even left their arena?
Has Louisville even left their arena? They are.
Like to go to class or do any? I don't think they've
They
left
play.
the arena.
No, they have not left the arena. They do play tomorrow night. We'll get this in a little bit. They're in at Madison Square Garden in the Jimmy V Classic against Indiana. But
Yes.
that's other. They're actually at Western Kentucky coming up. That's
Yes.
it for non-conference games away
Right.
from home.
And the Western, that I-65 series, we have done this in the past. Perhaps we'll do it again, like a theme show on out-of-conference rivalries. Not that that's a big national rivalry, but it is a regional game. I applaud Louisville for playing that. They discontinued it for a few years. Then it was just at Louisville, but it has resumed, in my opinion, as it should, as a home-and-home series. So good for them, even if it is sort of a rather winnable road game for them. But, again, Indiana and Louisville are separated by, I think, 60 miles. Geographically, I believe they're closer, albeit not nearly as heated of a rivalry as it is to Kentucky. So it makes sense that these two would go all the way to New York City and play each other rather than just at one. I don't know. But at least they're playing. It should be fun.
Yeah, they're playing a couple other two other teams that won on Tuesday night, David, that then turned around and had losses over the weekend. Miami had a nice win over Illinois and then turned around and lost to Green Bay on Saturday. Uh,
Yes, and
I,
they
I,
lost
I
to a
think
Green Bay team that we think is good. We're high on them, but it's a Green Bay team that went into Atlanta. At least allegedly they were there and just got thrashed by Georgia State. Really, really shocking that they would lose that game at home.
yeah, Miami actually did play tonight, also here Monday night, and they completely destroyed Savannah State 70-39. So I think they recovered from that Green Bay loss pretty well.
Yeah,
But I still like this Miami team. I think it's a really good team. Uh, they just ran. I'd say they ran into a buzzsaw with Green Bay, but
yeah.
is
Well,
Georgia
missed
State
an
that
off
good, or was it
night.
just an off night? Yeah.
Yeah, it happens and it's basketball, and you got to keep in mind, Miami, while not in an exempt tournament, won some, or were they? If they were, it wasn't a major one. They are one of those teams that really jumped off the page. I don't think they received any votes, or if they did, it wasn't many before the season started. So that just goes to show you how quickly things can take shape. Both them and Butler in the rankings, neither were receiving any votes at all before the season started.
Miami wasn't an exemptor. They won the Charleston Classic.
Okay, they did. All right, yes, I stand corrected. So again, they've done a lot. Butler's done a lot, just reinforcing the point that who even remembers now that, I mean, all of a sudden now that's the Green Bay loss is considered a bad one for them. So
I don't think it will look that bad come the end of the season. I do like
right,
this Bay team. Um, the other team that won Tuesday night, Michigan, with a nice win over Syracuse team that I personally still think is overrated, but
I do as well.
they did come up with that win. Syracuse is still sitting in the top 30 in Ken Palm right now. And then something happened on Saturday that has never
Our
happened
team,
before.
our
Uh,
team, Hoops HD's team, the team that belongs to the people. NJIT, the independent, goes into Michigan, beats a ranked team. You probably have the trivia here. I believe it is the first time they've beaten a ranked team in
David,
their history.
it was the first time they ever played a ranked team. They now have the greatest record in NCAA history
That is,
against nationally ranked teams. They are undefeated, 1-0.
it was
Um,
fabulous. It really was. So
Absolutely amazing win.
yeah,
NJIT coming in there 72-70. A little bit of bad news for NJIT. That perfect record is probably going to be going down in a couple of weeks. December 23rd, they're traveling to Villanova. They're in some trouble. But
yeah.
tomorrow night, they're hosting St. Francis College of Brooklyn at their home campus. It's
I
going
hope
to be a
they.
wild atmosphere there, I think.
I hope they get a big crowd. I mean, this is a team that still has a losing record.
Well, there's only one problem with them getting a big crowd. Their arena only holds 1,000 people.
I hope they have 1,000 people. I really hope there's some energy. That is something to be excited about, and it's a chance to get another win. The goal is, I mean, as much as we'd like to see them inside the bubble, and if they're able to get a few more wins like that, maybe they'll end up there. But we'd like to see them in a postseason tournament. That win alone, the win at Michigan, if they can finish at or above 500, how does the CIT not thank them? Nobody else in the CIT will have a win like that.
Yeah, I think they're definitely that win kind of locks up a CIT bid as long as they get to 500.
Yeah.
The school really needs to upgrade its facilities. You have a basketball arena with seats on only one side, only holds 1,000 people. If they have
Yes.
legitimate facilities, I think the conference would jump on them. Kind of interesting that Jim Engels, their head coach, came out this after the win and said, kind of blamed the NCAA for not helping them out to get into a conference, and kind of taken back about that. I don't think it's the NCAA's job to find a conference for you.
I don't either. I mean, that's our job. We should be helping them find a conference.
Yeah.
But
Give us a call. We'll work on
yeah,
it for you.
and I think we've got the league. It's not ideal, but it's a league that's looking for membership. It's the Atlantic Sun. They've gone outside of their geographic footprint to add Northern Kentucky. I think because they only have 8 members, and Kennesaw is looking to leave for football interests. They need anybody, and there really isn't anybody else other than NJIT that's basketball centric that would want to move to the Atlantic Sun, or unless it's a team that wants to reclassify from Div 2. We can make that happen. We will get on that. Give us a call. We're
Yes,
here to help.
give us a call. moving on to some of the games Wednesday night, we already discussed Duke's very impressive win over Wisconsin. Virginia actually had a couple of nice wins this week. They on Wednesday night they beat Maryland. They followed that up with a win over VCU over the weekend. Uh,
Yeah.
I think we've got them on the 2 line right now in the current S curve.
Yes, I believe that's right. Uh, yes.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with this Virginia team, or maybe they're did
They
that,
are on the 2 line. They're going to be on the 2 line. I left them out.
they're not even the S curve. All right, I'm obviously
You're
giving you the
supposed to be
wrong
catching
chance.
things like this. This is why I send it to you.
Well,
I
David,
tried to cover that. I tried to. I tried, Chad. Thanks for outing me. I was like, yes, the 2 line. Yes, the two.
well, they belong on the 2 line. I think they have this is they've had a really impressive season so far. Those 2 wins alone, extremely big. Um,
Yes.
they had that win over Rutgers that we are never going to discuss again because it was just so horrific from as a Rutgers fan.
Yes.
They
I
also have
have
the win over
now added them
GW.
into the 2 line. We need to scrimmage.
We just need to remember a few teams.
Right.
A few other games that happened Wednesday night. Moving on here, Iowa beat North Carolina. That one really surprised me. I thought that I predicted this game to be a blowout. I thought Carolina would crush them.
I did too. North Carolina, I guess because of how they typically play in conference, and then at the end of the year we forget. But every year they seem to get off to this patented slow start. You go back and look at where they were at this time last year. They lost at UAB, who missed the NIT. They lost at home to Belmont, who missed the NCAA tournament. So maybe this is kind of par for the course for North Carolina at this time of year. Not that Iowa isn't good. But I mean, it was surprising. I didn't think Iowa would be that good, but they actually played a really good game to win that one. It wasn't just that North Carolina was awful.
Yeah, no, Iowa's good. Another team that I had some question marks about heading into the season. Utah came up with a huge win over Wichita State.
Yeah,
I was very impressed with that victory as well.
I was too. I was actually impressed with both teams. Wichita went in there. It's not, I mean, it was a raucous atmosphere. This is a really good Utah team. And Wichita led for a good portion of the game, stuck right with them. But Utah, again, was ahead when time expired. But both teams, I thought, looked really good in that game. A good win for Utah. Wichita won't lose many.
No, Wichita won't lose many. Another game, Notre Dame, who's a team that there's another one of these teams that I've been kind of iffy on. Are they good? Are they not good? Real nice win over Michigan State. Who's another
Yeah,
team that I'm kind of iffy on whether they're that good or not.
I am. I'm iffy on them as well. Notre Dame just one loss. This was a team that Notre Dame basketball, the fans show up and support it, but they kind of have to prove themselves first. I think they have. I mean, it was a great crowd at this game. They should have great crowds the rest of the way, especially once they get into conference play. They're rolling after what they thought was a disappointing football season. I think there's a lot of energy around this Notre Dame team, at least right now.
David, turn to the SEC very briefly here. LSU began the season early on with a loss to Old Dominion, who's actually proven to be a lot better team than we thought they would. They also lost a game to Clemson. We wrote
Yes.
them off. Now they've beaten UMass and at West Virginia back to back.
Yeah.
Uh, do we actually have a team here that has some life to it, or is this
I think
West Virginia
so.
win a fluke?
I think they have some life to them, and because they're in the SEC, they have a lot of decent and beatable opponents, but no one that's going to completely overwhelm them other than Kentucky's two teams. And maybe even if Kentucky has a third team, they might be overwhelming as well. But, yeah, I do think they have some life.
All right. I agree with you, but I'm still this whole SEC. Everybody below Kentucky is a complete mess to me. Florida
Yeah.
has not been nearly as good as we thought they would be, coming off of the
They've been
Final Four last
atrocious.
year.
They were
Um,
fantastic tonight.
they crushed Yale tonight. That was,
Yes.
um, and we're going to get to Yale in a second here.
It's so why is it
Their game they played Friday night against Texas. It looked like they toyed with them for the first half, in my opinion, and just
it
took it over the second.
Yes.
It was ugly.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was.
but we just quickly mentioned Yale. Yale won at Connecticut. first time I think that Connecticut has lost a home game to an in-state rival in like 30 years, something along those lines.
Yeah, along those lines. It was a sloppy game that, I mean, just a frantic ending too, because with about 12 seconds to go, it looked like UConn had it in hand, and then Yale comes up with a big play to win it. Huge win for Yale. And you're looking at this Yale team, and you're like, 8-1, big win at UConn. They go to Florida tonight, and this is a fledgling, currently Florida team that had been struggling. If Yale gets this win, I mean, we're looking at two Ivies inside the bubble. Yale did not get this one.
85-47 Florida
Yes.
final.
It was painful. It was just, oh my God. I think Florida was working out a lot of frustrations, and things really clicked for them. I do think this is going to end up being a good Florida team, and it's just one of those things. By mid-January, you forget that they were even struggling at this point. But oh my God, I mean, it was an annihilation of what is not at all a bad Yale team.
One other SEC team I want to quickly mention here, Arkansas, played a game at Clemson yesterday.
That was
they were up 6 with under a minute left, and they lost somehow.
Yes. Arkansas has historically been, at least the last 3 or 4 years, atrocious on the road. I mean, they are home court heroes to the tune of only losing a game or two, if that, at home every year. But as good as they are at home, they are as bad on the road. We thought they had stepped out of that when they went down to SMU, which is kind of a snake pit, especially now that Larry Brown's got them going and got a win there. But they followed that up, getting blown out at Iowa State, which is not an easy place.
That's understandable, the Iowa State loss, though.
Yeah, but to go in the Clemson, and this was not a hostile environment against a good team, they really needed that one. I mean, and they didn't get it, and that is a problem. It's one thing to struggle against an Iowa State on the road or your ranked teams on the road. It's another to even struggle against tournament teams on the road. But if you are a tournament team, you have to beat non-tournament teams on the road, particularly non-NIT teams. Clemson, I don't believe, is an NIT team, and Arkansas couldn't get them. I think, again, it's the same indicative thing where Arkansas will take a team like Florida or these highly ranked teams to the wall and beat them at home, but then can't beat a top 100 team away from home.
The best news for Arkansas is that was their last road non-conference game. They got a few laughers, but first they do have a home game against Dayton coming up. Really, it might be a must-win now to make up for that Clemson loss. But to the extent they're going to get more road wins now, they're going to have to do it in conference.
Right, and they need some. You can't. I mean, I think that is painfully obvious with how the committee has selected teams over the years.
Even though their road win against SMU is going to look like a pretty good road win at the end of the year, you can't do it. You've got trips to places like Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, games that you should be winning. You've got to win these games. Auburn, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, South Carolina. They do have to go to Florida. They do have to go to Kentucky. But other than that, they've got winnable road games in conference. They've got to come up with those W's. Yeah. I believe at this point we want to kind of move on to a bit of a preview of next week's, unless there's any other specific games that you wanted to discuss for the past week here, David.
No, we got the big one. We've got NJIT with their win. Mm-hmm. That was one of the biggest ones. But still, I mean, a really exciting weekend of hoops. I know we already talked about it, but I thought the Arizona-Gonzaga game was a fantastic basketball game between two teams that I believe now, even though Gonzaga lost, they played extremely well. I thought both were legitimately top five.
As you know, Gonzaga was one of my preseason Final Four teams, and I swore off picking the Zags about 5 years ago, and have lived by that. Have lived successfully by that motto for quite some times. But I'm really impressed with this Gonzaga team as well. I think that this team is extremely legitimate and has a chance to make a very deep run.
Yes.
Just want to throw one other quick shout out here. It's very rare that you actually see a Division One team losing a game to a non-D1 team during the regular season. The University of Sciences of Philadelphia this past week went to Drexel and won.
Oh boy.
Uh,
Bruiser. Oh,
Bruiser
Bruiser.
Flint, I kind of been supporting him. I've always been supporter of Drexel basketball, but you just can't do that, Bruiser.
Oh
And
God.
if things don't turn around really soon, it might be time for a change there at Drexel at the top.
Probably so. That is, oh brother. Have they won this year against? I mean, they are not having a good year.
No, they are not having a good year. Actually, surprisingly, Delaware, who won that conference, is also off to a horrible start. Delaware's 0-7.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that league is looking very 15-16
Yeah,
Swedish.
yeah, Drexel does have wins over Cornell and Southern Miss already,
Okay.
but that University of the Sciences lost 54-52. Uh,
Um, I don't want to jump to conclusions before all of the data is in, but I think that that is the kind of loss the selection committee will frown upon.
yeah, they're going to have a lot of trouble getting an at-large bid at this point.
Yeah.
But moving on to some of the games coming up over the next week, beginning Tuesday night's games, the Jimmy V Classic in Madison Square Garden, a doubleheader. Really interested by this first game here, Illinois and Villanova. I think Villanova is a lot better team than Illinois, but I think it could be a tough game for the Wildcats though.
Right. I think these are both top 25 teams.
Right.
Illinois, just while losing at Miami, I thought played pretty well. I don't think that I agree with you. I mean, they're both top 25 teams, but one is a top 10 team, and that's
Right.
Villanova. Very good Villanova team. Um,
The other game, quite honestly, David, I'd probably go to bed early if I had most people because Louisville is playing Indiana, and while Indiana has been surprisingly good this year, their only loss is that Eastern Washington loss. I don't think they're in the same league as Louisville at this point, especially not the way Louisville played against Ohio State last week.
and I agree with that. I mean, Indiana admittedly has done better than I thought they would do, and this is coming from someone that wasn't surprised that Eastern Washington beat them. They have surprised me in the sense that they've been better than I thought. I don't think they're in Louisville's universe. I mean, this is just such a good Louisville team.
A couple other games on the slate for tomorrow night. Seton Hall, who is undefeated, is at Wichita State. I'm really excited about this game as well. I think the Seton Hall team may be legitimate. This is where we're going to find out for certain tomorrow night.
We are, and it is a litmus test. Seton Hall, while unbeaten, has also been, for the most part, untested, and they have not been tested like this. um, I think Wichita is going to pound them, but I mean, even if Seton Hall puts up, even if they lose but are competitive in this game, I will admit that Seton Hall is much better than I anticipated. But I don't think they will. I think that they're pretenders, and Wichita will just destroy them.
A game between a couple teams that I think are pretenders but are off to very good starts. Texas A&M is at Baylor tomorrow night.
Yes.
And this is not a Southwest Conference game, although
No.
it should be.
And it's not a Big 12 game either.
No, but Texas A&M is off to a 6-1 start. Baylor is also only has one loss. I think the 7-1 record by Baylor is even more surprising to me than Texas A&M's start, just because I really thought this Baylor team had nothing left after last season.
Right, and I think Baylor's been more tested than TAMU. I think Baylor gets this one tomorrow. And to go further, as far as who's for real and who's just a pretender, I think Baylor is for real and TAMU is not.
Okay, David, unfortunately, I just lost my schedule here for a second. I got it back up again.
Okay.
Moving on to Wednesday night's game, that's another big one here. 7 o'clock on FS1. Kansas is at Georgetown. I'm excited about this game.
I am too. Kansas went to Florida earlier last week and fell way behind, and it looked like Florida was going to run them out, but then Florida just stopped playing. And again, to fall behind to a team that, like Florida, and be able to come back on the road and win, pretty impressive there by Kansas. I think they're going to get Georgetown. I just really like this Kansas team. I know
Georgetown only has 2 losses
Yeah.
They 6 points to Butler. They beat Florida in overtime. I like this Georgetown heading into this team heading into this season, and
Yeah.
I think that Kansas has kind of been under impressive so far this season.
Yeah.
Uh, Especially the Florida game where I thought that they should have destroyed them. Instead, it was fairly close.
Hmm.
Uh,
I can see that too. So, I mean, I don't know. I think Kansas is going to step out of it. Hopefully, they get a bit. Georgetown did look good against one of our favorites, Towson, on Saturday, or was it Sunday?
yeah,
Um,
we actually have several good rivalry games coming up here Wednesday night as well. Going to begin with one of our favorite rivalries. Uh, Unfortunately, it's on FS2, which means nobody's going to be able to watch it.
well, I'll
But
watch it.
Rhode
I'm
Island
watching
and Providence are playing. Uh,
this. Oh boy. And this is Providence has lost their last two. And I did not realize the nature of this game. I mean, obviously, I knew it was a rivalry, and I'm sure I had seen it before, but watching it last year, this is a bitterly intense rivalry. Do you think I'm supposing too much when I say that Providence may have been looking ahead to this one, and that may have been why they kind of dropped their last game?
it may not. It may not be. I mean, they lost that game to Boston College, and you can't
Which
lose
is a
to Boston
rivalry as
College.
well. Yeah.
But you can't lose to Boston College. I mean, I think Boston College is going to get better under Jim Christian. I just don't think Boston College is there this year, and
Yeah.
that was a very disappointing loss. I mean, but that BC game was sandwiched in between a game against Kentucky and the rivalry. Well, actually, no, they play. They're playing Brown tonight, but they have the
Yeah.
rivalry game coming up Wednesday against Rhode Island. So I
Hmm.
can even get you a score update in that Brown game. I assume they won, but I don't want
And
to.
again, that matches up two teams in the same city. I wouldn't call that a rivalry, but this Providence Rhode Island game, it was just an absolute war last year.
And just to throw this out there, it's this Brown Providence game is 17-10 Brown in the first half right now as we're talking.
Oh
So
my
when you and
goodness!
I are done here, I think we'll be watching some Brown versus Providence Rhode Island battles first. But
Yes, is that on television?
that will be on Fox Sports One right now,
All
FS1.
right, let's get that. We are getting that on right as we speak.
Okay, but coming up, a few other games here Wednesday night. The Holy War, Utah at BYU.
Oh,
Uh,
great one.
Great, and
Um,
that is on campus at BYU.
yes, glad they kept this one going. I believe I might be being dispatched to that game. There was a little. I mean, I know it happened over the weekend, but it wasn't my fault. There was a little concern about sending me to a Mormon-based state. I don't foresee any problems though.
Okay, well, we're going to cross our fingers on this one, and I'm going to
Yeah,
make a few phone calls to make sure that I've got a few attorney friends I know out in Utah lined up and ready to go.
right.
Um,
But
Also,
I love this rivalry. It is not the same, not being a conference rivalry, but I still think it's an intense matchup.
and there's a third good rivalry game here Wednesday night: Colorado State at Colorado.
Yes.
Colorado disappointing so far. I really thought they'd be a good team. I think they have not been nearly as good as I thought they would so far. Colorado State, on the other hand, only has actually is undefeated so far, and really has impressed me.
Yeah, Colorado State has been very impressive. You know, Colorado has not, especially against other front range teams, that mythical conference.
They got blasted by Wyoming, 56-33. I think they scored 9 points in the second half of that game,
Yeah,
and then they went over this weekend and they went to Georgia and they lost by 7 points. And that's a game that you can't lose if you're an NCAA tournament team.
I agree. This game here, I would like. It's at Colorado, which is kind of disappointing. I would like to pose this question to the Colorado State fans: where the hell are you? You have an undefeated team. And they've beaten some good teams along the way, and there's nobody there. I believe at their last football game, and this was a team that I believe went 10-2 in football. There were 9,000 people at their last game. Where are you? Get
Listen,
out there and support your team.
Colorado State fans, coming up on Saturday, you're hosting Arkansas Fort Smith. You're going to win. You're going to win big. It'll be fun. Go
Yeah, I
to the
know.
game.
And this is a team that, at least in the Tim Miles days, was very well supported. It was. You watched the UTEP game; it was shocking. Where are the people?
No.
Anyway,
A couple of late games here Wednesday night. Washington State at Gonzaga.
oh,
Should be a blowout by the Zags. That's in Spokane. And Wyoming at California here. These are a couple of teams that have kind of been almost sneaking in under anybody's radar here. This
Right.
Cal team's off to a nice 7-1 start.
And
Their only
Wyoming
loss
only
was to Texas. They have a win over Syracuse. This will be a nice win for them at home.
Yeah, and Wyoming has only one loss as well, and they have a home win over I'm sorry, Colorado. So, um, Chad, since we're talking about rival, is the Front Range all back, or was that resumed? I mean, I know we're seeing a lot of Front Range games here, but I don't know if the whole round robin is back.
I don't know if they're doing a whole round robin either. That would be Colorado, Northern Colorado,
Denver, Wyoming,
and
Colorado
Colorado
State.
State. Yeah.
Yes.
Just looking at Colorado's schedule here, for
And Air
example.
Force, Air Force. I'm sorry. Yes.
Well, Colorado, for example, is not playing Air Force. They're not
Okay.
playing Denver, so it's not a full round robin.
Okay.
But
I
they're
missed
each
that.
playing about two or three of each other.
Yeah, I missed the front. I miss all these. Well, the Big Five is really I guess it's the best, and unfortunately, it's the only one that's really still going of mythical conferences. So
A couple more games coming up. Not much going on Thursday night. Probably the best game is DePaul at George Washington. Um, George Washington kind of not as off to as good of a start as we thought they would be.
right,
DePaul only has one loss though, David. Are they? Uh, is this just a fluke?
it is.
They did beat Stanford at home now.
Yes, it is still a fluke.
Okay. Yeah. Any time that we're talking both DePaul and TCU both being in serious consideration, there's got to be something funny going on.
Yeah, there is something very, very funny. TCU has not beaten anyone good, but they haven't lost to anybody decent. That's what's so shocking.
They haven't lost anybody at all.
Yes.
They haven't played anybody. No, and really, looking ahead at at TCU's schedule, this team could be undefeated at January 1st still. And
Yeah.
right now, they're in the mid 30s in terms of top 25 votes. If they do keep winning these games, they're just going to keep moving up. And
Yeah.
I'm shocked. I don't. I mean, this is a team that was absolutely pathetically bad last year.
Yeah, I mean, for the last several years,
Yeah.
really. I don't recall the last time they were CIT good, much less tournament top 25 good.
I want to run through a few more games here. Friday night, there's only 4 games on the entire schedule Friday night, but one of them should be a really good one. Iowa State and Iowa in their in their rivalry game here.
Yes,
Uh,
and again, this is rivalry week for the out of conference portion of it.
right.
We will see Saturday. We're going to get into a lot of these, and who knows, we might even have a special themed show later in the week. But yeah, this is a great one, and I think that last year, now that both teams are top 25 caliber good, people really saw it for what it is. These two teams do not like each other, and they always put on a show. It's worth tuning in.
Yeah. I don't know how much further we want to go through a few games Saturday. I could just run them down. You can let me know.
Yeah,
I know we're kind of running out of time here, but Saturday we've got games such as North Carolina at Kentucky, which should be a great game.
yeah.
St. Mary's is at Creighton. Dayton is at Arkansas, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and again, I think this is a great test for Dayton. We've been putting them inside our bubble. There hasn't really been a reason to put them out, but this will give us a reason to put them in. If they can go to Arkansas and win, even if Arkansas, continues to disappoint on the road, you get a lot of credit for going in there and beating them at their place.
Another huge game coming up I believe it's being played in Kansas City, Utah, and Kansas.
Yeah, that's going to
Should
be
be
a
a
good one.
should be a good one. Michigan is in Arizona. Here's a surprising
Oh,
one. Uh,
yeah.
Northern Iowa at VCU. Who would have thought that Northern Iowa would be the ranked team in that game?
Right, and again, this is tough. VCU, Shaka Smart, the whole time he's been there, they never really start playing until December anyway. I do think they're going to click and turn the corner and end up having a really big year. This is going to be a really fun one. Two contrasting styles between two good teams.
A couple other games here just Saturday. Oregon is playing Illinois. Uh, Gonzaga is at UCLA, which will be a good chance for the Zags to pick up a real good road win.
Yeah, and that's a real winnable game. In fact, it's one I'm expecting them to get.
And the final game here, David, I think we want to end with this because I want to discuss this team. Cincinnati's at Nebraska.
Oh
Uh,
boy.
Having looked at your S curve, and people will see this tomorrow morning, where are the Huskers? Why aren't they in the field?
Well, Well, because they haven't done anything. They went to Rhodey and lost. They've played a weak schedule, and they haven't really had any bad losses. But I don't. It's not easy to win at Creighton, and I think you need to give Creighton some props. At
Yeah,
least I
that
do.
was a home game for Nebraska. That was it. That was
Yeah.
at
Oh,
Creighton.
yeah. Losing. Excuse me. Yes, it was, and losing that game at home to Creighton is just. And perhaps Creighton's better than what I gave them credit for. I thought they'd be atrociously bad this year. They've proven me wrong, but they haven't done anything. And I think, like last year, they'll improve as the season goes on. But you got to beat Creighton at home. You got to go to Rhode Island and win, and they didn't. Like, what have they done that warrants inclusion?
Well, don't they have Tim Miles as their head coach?
Other than that, I'm trying to get confirmation from the committee if that will be on the profile. But Tim, if you're watching, and I know you are, I'm sorry. I didn't want to do it. Chad made me.
Well, I think on that sad, sad note for David Griggs and his love of Tim Miles, any other final thoughts here?
Not just again. I mean, again, it's a stressful week for a lot of kids. That's why we're not seeing many games. It is finals. I hope that I hope that they get through them without going too crazy.
Okay, well, on that note, we'll wish everybody a great week, and we'll be
Get
talking to you
me out of
again
here.
real
I'm
soon.
done here. It wasn't my fault.